Today, we're pulling back the curtain and performing a full corporate autopsy on one of the most spectacular, honestly mind-boggling collapses in American business history. We're going to dig into the rise and the ultimate self-destruction of Circuit City. But look, this isn't just a history lesson. We're examining this through a very specific lens to uncover a critical strategy that every executive absolutely needs to understand if they want to survive in business. So get ready, because the lessons here are vital for anyone making high-level decisions. We're starting with a massive, staggering peak sales number that completely defined this retail giant at the height of its power: $12 billion. By the year 2000, Circuit City was an absolute juggernaut. They employed 60,000 people across 616 locations. They were literally the undisputed national powerhouse of consumer electronics, a true category killer that just dominated the American retail landscape.
But then we immediately contrast that peak with the chilling reality of the remaining stores after a series of fatal executive decisions. 0. 60 years of history, billions in revenue, tens of thousands of jobs, just completely wiped out. The sheer velocity of this collapse is breathtaking, and honestly, it serves as a massive warning sign to all of us.
Section 1. The $12 billion ghost. So what actually killed this giant?
It's really easy to just point the finger at external market threats, but they didn't kill Circuit City. Amazon? Well, in 2007, they were still primarily a bookstore. Walmart? Sure, they sold electronics, but they certainly didn't sell expertise. And while the 2008 financial crisis definitely hurt everyone, competitors like Best Buy weathered the exact same storm and actually thrived. So, the true cause of death? It was entirely self-inflicted. They killed themselves from the inside out, one quarterly spreadsheet at a time.
Moving on to Section 2. Building the category killer. To really understand the fall, we actually have to look at the rise. Starting way back in 1949 with a single storefront, the Wurtzel family built this brand into a category killer using a core philosophy: selection, savings, service, satisfaction, and later on, speed. But I want you to pay very close attention to service. Circuit City was powered by commissioned salespeople who had incredibly deep product expertise. If you needed a complex stereo system or a brand new computer, you went to Circuit City because their people actually knew what they were talking about. That was their golden goose, and it's a very foundation of the strategy modern executives just keep forgetting.
Now get this, here is a staggering missed opportunity. Back in 1988, a growing competitor with just 9 stores approached Circuit City about an acquisition. The price tag? $30 million. That competitor was Best Buy. Alan Wurtzel passed on the deal, believing Best Buy's non-commissioned, warehouse-style business model just wasn't sustainable. He later admitted, quite frankly, that he was very, very wrong.
Which brings us to Section 3, the fatal spreadsheet decision. So, it's 2003. Watching Best Buy's massive rise, executives decide to just copy the easiest parts of their model. They completely eliminated all commissions to save $130 million a year. Now, it was a move that looked absolutely brilliant on a spreadsheet, right? But it totally gutted their core differentiator of expert customer service. They essentially traded their entire identity for a short-term cash grab. And here's exactly how that decision played out on the actual store floor. Highly trained experts, people who had spent years learning the intricacies of cameras and computers, were suddenly offered lower hourly pay as so-called product specialists. Naturally, the best ones left. Those who stayed lost all incentive to hustle. Suddenly, Circuit City stores became totally indistinguishable from Best Buy. Well, except Circuit City stores were older, and their real estate was in declining locations. They literally gave away their only true advantage.
Section 4. The Massacre of 2007.
Instead of fixing the bleeding culture, executives just doubled down. In a single day in 2007, under a so-called wage management initiative, they fired roughly 8% of their entire workforce. That's 3,400 of their most experienced people gone, simply because they were paid above market. Now, if you're an executive looking to trim budgets, pay close attention to this. While Circuit City was sprinting to the bottom, competitors like Best Buy and Home Depot were actually raising wages, investing in training, and climbing right to the top.
We absolutely cannot ignore the human element here. Take Bobby Young, for example. He worked at Circuit City for 20 years, making $18 an hour. He was called into an office, laid off, and handed a severance package with the incredibly insulting caveat that he could reapply for his exact same job in 10 weeks at a lower wage. Treating dedicated employees like mere line items sent a very clear message to everyone: your loyalty is worthless. It absolutely destroyed public trust and sparked immediate, devastating customer boycotts.
And the optics of this? Just disastrous. You have CEO Philip Schoonover taking home $7 million that year, while firing the very people making $18 an hour who actually held their customers' loyalty. In fact, the top 6 executives had collectively earned over $33 million in the previous 3 years. Crazy enough, on the day of the layoffs, the stock actually rose 35 cents. Wall Street cheered the cost-cutting. But as we know now, Wall Street was dead wrong.
Section 5. The inevitable death spiral.
By 2008, after missing gaming trends, failing to secure Apple partnerships, and completely ignoring online retail, the company was basically a walking zombie. The timeline here maps out the brutal, undeniable speed of their final collapse. November 3rd, massive store closures. November 7th, hundreds axed at headquarters. Just 3 days later, Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They promised they wouldn't liquidate, but they couldn't find a single buyer. And by January 16, 2009, they announced total liquidation. Everything must go.
This balance sheet of failure illustrates the staggering carnage inflicted on the massive vendors who had trusted them. Over 100,000 creditors were left holding the bag. Hewlett-Packard was owed $119 million, Samsung $116 million, Sony $60 million. Look, when you destroy your frontline, you eventually destroy your B2B partnerships too.
The human toll was massive. Over 30,000 employees lost their livelihoods. And even worse, many had utilized an employee purchase program, investing up to 10% of their salaries into company stock. Well, that stock became entirely worthless. Lives and retirements were ruined, and 60 years of retail history just evaporated into thin air.
Finally, Section 6. The ultimate executive lesson.
Wall Street might temporarily reward short-term cost-cutting, but long-term survival demands a different strategy entirely. You have got to view your frontline people as your primary asset. That's the core strategy. Circuit City looked at their most knowledgeable, experienced employees and saw a liability. They saw customer service as an expense to be minimized rather than the very engine of their revenue. The $12 billion that vanished wasn't just lost sales. It was the cost of the illusion that a company can simply cut its way to greatness.
So I leave you with this final, provocative thought to consider. The next time you look at a spreadsheet of employee wages, the next time you feel that pressure to trade expertise for a quick bump in quarterly savings, really ask yourself, are you truly optimizing for greatness, or are you, just like Circuit City, simply cutting your own throat?